Greetings, mortals, peers, and queers. Welcome to the Monday show where we have a panel with three other creators. And we're just going to sit, we're going to chat, we're going to talk about various topics over the next hour or so. We're going to hang out and we're going to be able to unleash our thoughts in more loose, but also in more depth form, as all of us, our discipline is in TikTok, so we want the opportunity to stretch out and explain our thoughts in more depth, as well as just goof off and joke around and have fun. And I will let each of my guests introduce themselves, starting in the top left. Astr0feminist,
Yeah.
go ahead. Give us a little intro.
Hey, I'm Astr0feminist. That's my TikTok handle. That's pretty much the only platform I use. My content's really mainly centered around targeting misogyny and discussing misandry and basically anything that involves the patriarchy. But I also kind of talk about things that I've experienced in my transition from being on the right, which I was for a very long time, and kind of shifting over to the left. So if you want to check out some of that, go look at my profile.
All right, thank you. And Gabriel, why don't you give us a little intro to you?
As they said, my name is Gabriel, and I do TikToks about like anarcho-communism and different leftist things that I've been involved in. I have a lot of fun going into different aspects of it, and at the same time talking about some of my theologic views from my upbringing, growing up in one of the oldest urban Christian communes in the United States. So I draw from a lot of weird stuff, but I ended up being a leftist somehow. So I just make TikToks about that, and you can definitely check out my stuff if you're interested.
All right, and PK, take it away.
Hey, my name's Dakota. I go by PKK Dakota on a lot of platforms. Most of my TikToks are geared around direct action, social issues, and birds and camping and Mothman.
Wonderful. And for those of you who may be joining us for the first time and don't recognize me, hello, I'm Lady Avalon. I'm the host of Serotonin Studios. I'm a transgender, lesbian, socialist, polyamorous, atheist, disabled, and I'm a ginger. So you can find which one of those is most offensive to you and comment it down below. All right. And opening us up, Astr0feminist, you wanted to talk about Andrew Tate.
My favorite man in the world to shit on. And just the fact that he got deplatformed, I think, is a really good step in the right direction for really combating misogyny. There's a lot of things that need to get done and need to get taken care of, and progress that needs to be made. But that was a highlight of my week, and I'm just really glad that happened. So, just wanted to start on a high note.
All right, wonderful. So yeah, Andrew Tate got banned. He's blown up over the past couple of months as an extremely misogynistic and sexist individual. I think it's fair to say he didn't invent misogyny. This isn't a new thing. He's just the latest iteration. We've seen various iterations, less successful iterations in the past, and for the most part, those have been squashed each time or been revealed as uncharismatic or hypocritical or sleazy or any number of things. Tate seems to be unique in that so far he is the most charismatic version of this breed of misogynists. And he also seems to be the most successful, raking in quite a bit of money. But he also seems to be one of the ones that's committed the most criminal offenses. And I think a useful insight to types like him is that they never seem to survive the spotlight for very long. Them getting popular is a double-edged blade. On the one hand, they gain larger audiences, sure, and they gain money off of that, sure. But once they start attracting the attention of like normies and your average person who finds these views extremely objectionable, then you get platforms like TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram that all ban him off of their sites because he's bad for advertising. and those sites don't want to piss off the majority of people who find him so objectionable. So they don't. It's unfortunate that they rise to so much prominence so quickly, but also almost just as quickly they get booted out of the spotlight as the hammer is brought down on them. Thoughts around the panel?
I think that you kind of brought up a good point there about how he had a really bad record. I saw someone on TikTok share a thought that there's always going to be someone new that has these kind of views, and that the next person will have a slightly cleaner record that will make it a lot harder for him to be taken down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something to watch out for, because there's always, just because he got deplatformed this week doesn't mean there's not going to be a carbon copy in 6 months or a year that's doing the same thing. And just the fact that he was so profitable from it, and pretty much was able to indoctrinate teenage boys and young men, which is really concerning. A lot of teachers have been sharing their interactions with students regarding him, and some of them have shared really concerning stories about how pervasive the nature of his content is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've let me see. Do I have my Discord tab open? I do not. There was
The Reddit thread.
Well, there was quite a few.
Yeah, it's
Discord.com.
scary.
I want to mention that too, like just how kind of children that don't know any better, or maybe like emotionally stunted men, will see that and kind of go, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense. He is charismatic, and a lot of people tend to, whatever opinion they hear first is the one they kind of gravitate to. So it's kind of scary, like when a 12-year-old boy will find that and be like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't have any evidence to disprove that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, his notoriety and the amount of money that he's amassed, and his basically overall wealth, I think that kind of speaks to that capitalistic quality, to where we're drawn towards people that have success in lots of money and objects, with the whole "what color is your Bugatti" thing. It kind of speaks to, you're a valuable person if you have a lot of money, and that's why a lot of young people have gone towards him and followed him, because they think that that's what being successful means. So
yeah,
it's dangerous for impressionable minds.
And I think it's important. These are the type of people you can't really like debate seriously, because when you start to corner them into a specific point, when you start to criticize them, they're just going to ask you, well, what color is your Bugatti? Or how many bitches have you fucked, huh? Sounds like a soy boy weak man. That's why I think I don't know if any of you are familiar with Hassan. I think it was really effective for him to go on because Hassan is a drop dead gorgeous looking human being who's also stupidly wealthy for reasons outside of anything to do with Andrew Tate's bullshit. Which meant that Andrew Tate's usual like digs and quips really couldn't work against him, and he tried. And Hassan didn't really debate him; he just sort of made fun of him, which I think is extremely effective. Making fun, Andrew Tate gives off the energy of someone who is like desperately afraid, who will contemplate suicide if a girl they slept with made like a small dick joke in present company. Like, he put him on watch. If a girl he slept with made a small dick joke after he slept with, he would be devastated. He'd never forget that. His ego is so wrapped up. Making fun of him is the best solution for getting rid of him, because they're almost all ego, and once you crack that, once you pop that like a bubble, they're gonna flounder, they're gonna get mad, they're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, but shout out to Daz. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You haven't said anything at all, Gabriel.
I'm just listening. Everyone has great ideas and great stuff to say. I think one of the interesting things that is brought up again with this situation that's like kind of parroted constantly by conservatives and people about like cancel culture or freedom of speech from companies, and how insane that is for someone to rep capitalism as hard as Andrew Tate has, but then they get to have the results of capitalism, which at the same time, like, I think people and our country as a whole should reevaluate how dangerous hate speech is. It's something that Europe did after World War II. A lot of countries denazified themselves by making some forms of speech like equivalent to physical violence. So if you do like a Nazi salute in Germany, you go to jail. Like, if you just do that in public, you go to jail.
Nice.
It's like one of those things where, and a lot of countries had laws like that. Some of them have died down a little bit, but for the most part, there are still like a few core countries around Germany which have pretty severe laws around blatantly Nazi things that aren't like educational or something like that. And so that's something I think that as Americans we should really start looking into, because almost every single mass shooter you see is these people who have listened to some person who has gone to court and has said in court, like there's so many people like Hannity and what's his face, Alex Jones just lost all this money, but that's just one of the things he went off on. Alex Jones has gone off on so many different things and said so many things that have led to mass shootings, in my opinion. And so it's like, that's one of the things I think we can do to address mass shootings, is actually taking away some freedom of speech that is like hate speech, because that's not freedom of speech. It's like being violent. There was a precedent to this of someone yelling fire in a crowded theater and that being ruled like not acceptable. And so that's something that I think we might need to start looking into a lot more, where it can get dangerous if certain things can be blamed as terrorist, and then all of a sudden that's not free speech. So it is a double-edged sword. Like, people supporting Antifa, per se, could get in trouble for doing that, because if they get labeled as a terrorist organization or something like that, even though they're very clearly not. It's literally like the opposite.
They're not even an organization, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, I always love Antifa HQ.
Ideology.
There was like a, oh man, that was the one thing about what was the thing before TikTok? Vine. There was an account on Vine called Antifa HQ, and they just did like, it was two guys who had like an office job, obviously, but they would just dress up really funny and do like 6-second videos of like random office things happening in Antifa HQ every day. It was so funny. I got
nice.
They're freaking hilarious. But yeah, it's just, so it's like, yeah, you have to be careful about doing things like taking away freedom of speech, but at the same time, that's when it starts heading towards my ideologies that are cool with the government. Although I'm like an anarcho-communist at heart, there's some bits of the government I'm like, it'd be good to have some protections while capitalism is still around. And that's a huge thing too, is like how much government is good or not. But if we're going to be capitalist, we need protections for people. So until we actually remove capitalism as like the economic structure of our country, we need to have like viable things. So some crazy person can't profit from saying hate, cause mass shootings, keep their money, and not go to jail. Like, that just can't be a thing that we let happen in our country if we're going to be capitalist. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think everyone always mistakes as like, yeah, companies can do whatever the fuck they want. They're not bound by free speech laws. People who complain about that, it's like, go make your own Facebook then. Trump did that dumb thing with his own website that he's tweeting stuff from now. But like, as you can see, it's not very popular. And the only things that ever come of it are ways to poke fun at him for losing his shit. But yeah, that's just like a thing off of this Andrew Tate thing that I always find funny. People don't understand legal things about what freedom of speech is. And also, should leftists start considering more aggressive action towards hate speech? Because arguably what he said is going to cause people to get SA and stuff like that. Because it's like glorified by him. So should he be taken down, not just with this, but maybe like legally? I mean, obviously he's done all these other crimes too as well. Like, but
I believe he's being investigated for human trafficking.
Yeah, at least he's being investigated.
Oh, he got raided. His home got raided in Romania.
That's so Oh my gosh, yeah. I haven't been keeping that much track of this. I just know
I
that shit's happening for him, and I'm just like, that's good. I've been seeing the downfall of him since Hassan's stuff, because that's about like the closest thing to him I've seen. Is I just keep track of what Hassan does whenever I have some free time, because his takes are pretty okay as far as like large YouTubers go.
Well, I think the credit goes to Daz, because he made a video. He has about last time I checked was 7.6 million followers, and he made a video 3 or 4 days ago, and I mean, it was really good, and he was just kind of like, not necessarily poking fun, but just like, this is really harmful, this is why you're wrong, this is really like just dumb ideology. And within hours is when he actually got banned from everything. So I mean, it kind of sucks that it took a man saying it to like let it take seriously, but you know what, wins where they happen, credit where credit's due. So happy about that. But the breaking news, Trump being representing himself.
Oh my god, that's so good!
What are the consequences of him losing this trial? Because I was joking about like how it's funny he's gonna go to fucking jail, but
well,
is that something is this just like a?
I hope it doesn't even go there.
Like, is this just like some kind of like bad, and like a slap on the wrist, or is he gonna get fined money, or is he like actually gonna get like a felony and like go to jail? Because that's like,
well, this is in the case of the espionage, so this is some big shit. And like, oh my god, I just feel like it's gonna be like a scene from The Office. Like, people are gonna be looking at a non-existent camera, like when he's talking.
I doubt this is going to even happen this year, because all these kinds of legal things always get pushed out like a whole year.
True.
Like, it's going to take a while. But if it somehow happened this year, it would be the year of court cases.
Oh yeah, Legal Eagle is going to be busy, all right?
Jones, we get this. I mean, there's news about this, so it's almost considered as part of this year, even if it never happens this year. I doubt it's going to take place quickly. It would be cool, but good lord. That's the funniest thing.
I think one of the things that people are overlooking is the consequences of being found guilty for treason. Is the law is either life imprisonment or death. So that's the only two options that this ends in. So like, no one's even discussing the fact he might be put to the death penalty, which I think would be hilarious.
This happened in Florida.
There's
right?
no way they'd go that far. There's no way.
Yeah, it's in Florida. I have the screenshot.
Florida has some wacky laws, yo.
They
have really aggressive laws. I know
It's
it's
a
like
federal law.
It's a federal thing. So, and that's the other thing too. Isn't there like a moratorium on the death penalty still at a federal level? Like,
I don't know.
time for Google.
It's a good thing we all have computers in front of us. Man. You know, I should have put makeup on for this panel.
I just think
I've
all
been
the
so
oath
busy.
keepers and stuff that are like, we gotta water the tree of patriotism with blood, and it's like, let's start with Trump.
Yeah. Honestly, you know, I've had interactions with, you know, conservatives online, and I had probably one of the greatest interactions. Let me see if I can find it on one of my recent videos. Comments 7. Right, it was this one. It was just talking about how like a former CIA agent called BS on Trump's claim that he could just declassify everything, and sort by new. Let me read you this interaction. It's so fun. We don't need any more MSN BS. Are you aware Insider is run by the Cabal? Don't you know what CBL is? Until you do your research, hold off on your propaganda. What we need now is true patriots who are willing to fight for the truth. Your content will only divide people further. This is not about T or B. It's about our future.
Every time I hear crazy nuts go off about the Cabal or whatever, so in Destiny 2, that's like one of the main enemy races for like aliens. And I always can't not be like, these motherfuckers need to stop playing video games. But yeah, no, they're serious about that thing. It's
Yeah, well, here's the thing. As
doing on nut stuff.
you know,
Oh, death penalties. So, Dark Brandon Rising, making our DOJ run by Merrick Garland, who should be a fucking Supreme Court justice. If the Democrats weren't bitches.
yeah.
Sorry, I never. Why did they not get it through with Obama? Why they're like, oh, it's too close, and they like stonewalled it. But then
It's because
exact thing with Trump. I don't understand it. Don't
Yeah.
understand it.
No, it's because they don't.
Anyways.
The Republicans don't care about the rules, and they blocked Obama from
Why
getting a
does
Supreme Court
Democrats
judge.
care? Yeah, it's like, why has Democrats ever cared about the? That's the thing. Is like, I feel like they should have. Democrats could have been more aggressive. I guess that's what I should say. I shouldn't be so mean. But yeah, Merrick Garland. He imposed a moratorium on death penalty things or execution until a review has been done to make sure that things are being done within like good justice practices or something. There's actual things. While a review of policies and procedures is happening, and that happened actually in July of last year. And this is the Department of Justice's website I'm looking at right now, and I do not see anything about it starting up. Again, it is just, at least to my knowledge, still happening, which that's good. I'm actually very much against the death penalty.
Yeah.
I think that it's better to keep someone in jail for the rest of their life. It costs less money to do that, and it gives people the opportunity to study that person to see if they are like any kind of way that psychologists, like if we just executed every single serial killer that ever happened, all that work that was done with psychology to try to profile serial killers would have never happened. So it's understandable to want to kill someone who like did severe forms of SA and like serial killers, but at the same time, it costs you less money for your taxes to keep them just in prison for their whole life, and it gives you a chance to get something out of them, to give back to society. As soon as you kill them, you get rid of that opportunity to get anything from them. So it's just cutting off at a point where they have just taken from society, and there's no benefit to be done outside of just like feeling better. But I don't know like how much that actually even does fix for someone. I've never been in a circumstance where someone in my life was just straight up like murdered in a way where the person ended up getting executed. So I don't know if I have as much of a place to stand to say that stuff, but it just seems logical to me that there isn't death penalties. And then there's also the chance of people literally getting executed by the state who are innocent, and that happens very frequently. If you look up the Innocence Project, they do a ton of good work. I have them as my TikTok thing, and I don't even think I said my TikTok in the beginning. Anyone watching and noticed that my @ on there is GWJonesss, and then instead of one S, it's just 3 S's because that username wasn't taken. And then it figures out that username works on like all platforms. And I was starting a boot camp thing for school, and I had to make like 5 new like usernames for all these different websites for coding and stuff. So I needed something, and that worked. And that was about the same time I started my TikTok. So, but
that works.
Anyhow, yeah, that's on there, and that's a really good thing to donate to or look into at least, because the Innocence Project puts out a lot of research on that stuff, not just helping people, but they also do a lot of studies and things on it.
I think this is a multidimensional issue. Like obviously, having mass shootings I guess the context was on serial killers, but mass shootings is kind of synonymous with that here in the United States. So obviously there's conversations to be had on gun control and prison reform, so that people can actually become functioning members of society, even if they aren't necessarily facing capital punishment or crimes that would face capital punishment. I think it's important to kind of overhaul the entire system, because it's essentially like slave labor the way it is now. I mean, just, people commit crimes, but
It literally is
yeah.
slave labor. There are states where they legally don't have to pay you for doing work, and you are mandated to do that. Or your option is, because you can like not. You can always not. You can always rebel against any authority and just like sit down and do nothing. And their option is to either like beat the crap out of you, and eventually, if you just keep doing nothing, they'll just leave you alone. That's usually what happens. Or they kill you. But like
That shouldn't be your
that,
only
that,
two
that
options.
usually doesn't happen. It happens, but it usually doesn't. But then is solitary confinement, which is literally torture. And so your options are to do free labor, like slave labor, or have like psychological torture done to you. And they've done a lot of studies on like keeping people in rooms like that, and it's like one of the worst things you can actually do to a human, where it causes like irreparable damage that's like never fixed. So it's like if you want to make sure someone's fucked up forever and does terrible stuff for the rest of your life, definitely put them in solitary confinement, because they will for sure hurt everyone around them for the rest of their lives because of it. Almost every time, it just makes people more psychologically damaged, and if they were already psychologically damaged and that caused them to end up in jail for whatever reason, it is just adding to that pile that needs help, and instead it's just given more worse conditions to deteriorate in.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to just anything involving prisons, and for-profit prisons are fucking useless. I don't even know why they're. I shouldn't cuss.
You're allowed to cuss. It's YouTube.
Well, I didn't know if it's gonna like. I don't know.
Freaking useless.
It's all right.
But
Yeah, it's kind of scary because there was a bill just this past year in North Carolina. The Republicans pushed it through, and it was a bill that was kind of like laying out like how much they can pay an inmate, and it's kind of like a reverse minimum wage, which means they can work you as many hours as they want, but you can never earn more than X amount. So whether you work 10 hours or 100 hours, you get the same thing. And they had to give them at least something. I think it's like $5 an hour is like the most they can make per hour.
It's still nuts.
yeah.
Yeah, it's our prison system is deeply immoral in basically every direction.
A good example of how prisons can be reformative instead of punishment
Mm.
and continue like cycles of violence is the Netherlands. They have like open air prisons that are just like houses that are guarded to some extent, but from all the social safety nets in their society, coupled with what people are offered in the prisons, it works incredibly well. Their recidivism is like one of the best in any nation that's comparative. So that's something that is not a bad idea, and it costs like not terribly much money. Like there's so many better ways of spending our money than what we are, but at the same time, like our system keeps capitalism running. Like Arizona, I think it was claiming that without their slave labor from prisons, they couldn't function.
I saw that. God, that is the most dystopian thing you can ever read. They're like, oh, but our economy will collapse without slave labor. It's like, well, we managed it once before.
When people are bringing up that it's animal abuse, what the cops do to dogs, and then cops were like, well, I guess we're just going to have to kill all of our service dogs. And you're like, you literally don't have to do that. Though.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, oh man, if you can't pay to feed them, I guess we're just going to kill them all. And it's just like, what? How is that the other option?
That's the first thing they go to every time is, oh, guess we gotta kill everybody. We gotta hold a gun to somebody. It's always involving death or violence or something. Always. So.
PK, did you have a topic you wanted to talk about on the panel?
Yeah, there's too much poop everywhere. We talked about it earlier, but earlier this year, the national park changed the requirements to their leave no trace policy because the amount of people that went to parks during the pandemic and stuff, there was an alarming amount of fecal matter and things like E. coli in waterways and streams, in the ground itself. And then with the two North Carolina rivers that are now no longer safe to be in or around, I got the names of them, the Clayton River Walk and the Smithtown Commons. They also failed their test to be water safe. So they have a warning that says boaters, swimmers, and their pets should avoid the water or practice caution at these sites. Exposure may come with increased risk of gastrointestinal illness or skin infection. And a lot of waterways like that, like I live in a place without city water, so if something happened to like that here, there's no government entity that's filtering the water and checking water levels to make sure they're safe. But yeah, we gotta stop the poop.
Gotta stop pooping in the water.
You know, it's stuff like that that always reminds me, culturally, America has like a strong aversion to the concept of bureaucracy. And America's always trying to privatize, things that should not be privatized, like the post office or, the EPA or, fish and game, things like, I think it's good that we have some measure of bureaucracy that is not profit driven. We have organizations from the government that are not profit driven, but instead are solely designed to improve the health and wellness of both people and the environment that we live in. Coming from a state where the fish and game is a real big presence in my state, where the amount of things you can fish, the amount of things you can hunt, those are tightly regulated because my state believes in a good balance between, human and environment, human environmental balance, because if we overhunt, if we overfish, there's no turning back that clock. You set a species to extinction, and you can't unextinct a species, and so that requires a bit of centralized forward planning. You can only hunt so much this year, so that you can hunt so much next year. If you overhunt this year, you're not going to be able to have as much for next year. And capitalist enterprises are historically atrocious at forward planning and central thinking. That's kind of my point. Is
I'd be concerned with like the libertarians.
Oh yeah, no, libertarians
Like
are
libertarians have their way.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't they have a town?
That one was
that
just
got
for you, Jones.
Like, did they
That's
get their
someone-
town get overrun by bears?
That's someone I should reach out to about joining our Discord server.
Yeah.
There's a person from New Hampshire that did like a research paper for like college and stuff on that, and they live like not far from there, and they are like a very good authority on knowing what the fuck happened, because it's literally like they grew up there, they live not far from there, they did a whole research thing on it.
Neato.
And it's, like, super funny because I was just making fun of libertarians once and brought that up, and she just popped up on my video and was like, hey, so I know everything about this and I have all these videos about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do any work. I just like reference everything she was saying. But one thing that I was just thinking about that's like a good analogy, and maybe this could explain benefits of socialism better, with how you were talking about people wanting to put things in the private enterprise. It's kind of how annoyingly crappy Netflix has gotten recently. Is a good example of this. and our taxes are like a subscription to the United States. Now, currently, our votes barely count for anything, unless if you live in Wyoming, then your votes count for a fuck ton of votes. But the way that our government runs is like influenced so heavily by corporations and stuff like that, and so it's people are just trying to make money and not trying to make things nice. Like, imagine if you could vote on what Netflix spent their money on. So everyone voted on like all their favorite movies that they wanted, and Netflix made decisions on what licenses to purchase based on everyone's democratic vote. I bet you Netflix would have a bunch of cool shit. But
My friend, IP law is something I'm interested in.
Yeah, right. As it stands, Netflix doesn't have to do that or care, and so they make their decisions based on how to get really big bonuses for people making the decisions. So they're not really that they're like slightly incentivized to not have total crap, but at the same time, because they're such a huge corporate giant, like they're not really that incentivized because they can just corner the market all the time, and they hold on to a lot of licenses that they don't even use just to be dicks, so that people can't use them.
Oh yeah.
To create a literal scarcity in the market, which is similar to like things that the United States does as well. But like that's just how it is. It's like, what if you could decide what your taxes went towards, and they were good things, and that's how the government should be running. If we're gonna have like a centralized federal government, we should be able to decide that kind of stuff. So like Citizens United is like so dangerous, and honestly, it's like the one thing that's causing things like this to happen, where like we've seen terrible water in Flint for so long, and PK, like you're saying, that could extend, like it's all over the United States. There's water problems, but like where you're at, where there's no like help with city water or anything, like if something goes sideways, there's like it's gonna be a Flint situation all over again, where you're gonna only be able to drink bottled water or stuff like that, and then people who sell bottled water make a lot of money, and so it's just like one of those things where that's a good way to look at it, is like America could totally be like a subscription service that we get nice things from by deciding. That's like the idea of democracy, but it currently doesn't stand like that, and that's a good way of talking people into like liking taxes and liking government. It's just like, what if it actually did stuff that was helpful though?
You just can't use the socialist buzzwords.
Yeah. So I'm like, what if it's a subscription to having roads, and you could just go, instead of paying for like 20 different subscriptions and paying for all this expensive like cable TV, you can just go to the hospital. That's one of the things in your subscription, for Netflix, is now you can just go to the hospital for free whenever. You can go to regular doctor checkups for free whenever. And then you probably actually won't have to go to the hospital barely ever, because you'll get regular checkups. That's a huge thing that people always forget about with countries with universal healthcare, is they have so much less statistics on like severe illnesses, and that's why the United States has like good statistics on solving severe illnesses. It's because no one goes to the fucking doctor to deal with things when they're like malignant and not like bad or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know if that word was the right word to use there, but
yeah.
Malignant?
Honestly, one of the talking on the Netflix thing, because a good bureaucracy deals with the little mind-numbing details that most people, don't care about. Like the minutia of IP law is, I think, a really good example. Or my endless crusade against suburbs. These are things that most people don't give a shit about. And rightly so. They're boring. But, a good bureaucracy gets in there and you micromanage those little things. Like, to the panel, do any of you know the United States current IP law? Like, if you have an idea and you write it down, how long do you own that idea? Take a guess.
Isn't it like 70 years after the death of the creator?
75 years, yeah.
Very close. It's 95 years plus the lifetime of the creator. That is insane. There are research papers that we cannot read because they are locked behind IP law for the next 200 years. There are books we cannot use. The public Creative Commons is dried up because we haven't been able to use anything for like 150 years. And the reason is because the House of Mouse wants to hold on to Mickey. And because of that, they've spent so much money to lobby the government to keep extending copyright law. And you know what? Mickey's up for the Creative Commons come 2024, but the damage has already been done. You know, we can't, how many stories have remixed and retold the stories of Dracula or Sherlock Holmes or Frankenstein? Even a lot of the things that made Disney famous, Alice in Wonderland, The Little Mermaid, those are Creative Commons that people reimagine and retell, tell their own versions. But we can't do that anymore with a lot of our creative works. And we haven't been able to do that for over 100 years. And that's really hurt the creative medium, There's a lot of meat that we can't just use and recycle. If I was president, if I was running the bureaucracy, I would put it back to what it used to be before Disney started lengthening it like crazy. You say you write a book or you make an invention, you have 7 years. That's it. 7 years to make a business, make your profit, and then after that, it enters the Creative Commons, and everyone else can do it. So if you make a product, you have 7 years to establish a market share. You have to build a brand, and then after that, you get competitors. Everyone else can compete against you. This would really be useful. I'm using examples like movies, comic books, and inventions, but this would be most useful in the medicine industry. The medicine industry is really struggling because only 3 companies make insulin, and they keep only slightly altering the patent so that you can't make a common derivative for everyone to use, which allows them to keep prices extremely high. This IP law fucks over everyone else for the expense of the very few rich and powerful who already got in and they want to maintain their hold over the market. So a good bureaucracy would get rid of that, And that's actually one of the things I'd like to see with, Biden be more aggressive on. I didn't like the first year of his administration, but Biden's second year of his administration has been a series of win after wins, supporting unions and everything with the DOJ at his direction, or signing laws to protect abortion rights, the EPA. He's doing a lot of good with the powers that he can. He can't force anything through Congress, although I do think he should really try harder to push things through Congress, or at least force the Republicans, burn them at the stake of every bad decision they make. But with the powers that he's got, he's doing a lot of good, and for that, I'm happy.
I agree. I think this second year has had a lot of really positive steps in the right direction, even though it's just been kind of a wild last 3 years have just been wild card after wild card. So who knows what's coming next.
All right.
He's also canceled some student debt, and they're talking about he might continue to put a pause while working out something to cancel more.
And that is extremely good. I'm really glad that he's making steps. He should, in my opinion, cancel all student debt and lift 43 million Americans out of poverty instantly. The boon to the economy that would be, with 43 million Americans suddenly having so much more money to spend in the economy, to start new businesses. It would be unparalleled.
By Alfred.
But oh well. Do y'all mind if we move on to the topic I wanted to talk about today? All right. So this started with a Tumblr post that went viral a while back, and I came across it. I've really liked it. This is like the third or fourth time I've come across it, and I thought it was a good opportunity to bring up with the panel, as we've got a mix. We've got a trans woman like myself, and we've got cis woman and a cis men. So, with that, let me begin. This Tumblr post reads:
Man, is it me or Gabe?
both of you, cis men. To my knowledge, you are both cis men. Yes.
Yeah, I go he, him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take the bullet. I'll be the token cis.
We appreciate you.
I'm not 100% straight, but I go by what I was assigned. I haven't felt different.
All right. Let me get into this. Quote: still bothered by the U.S. cultural idea that men can only be non-romantically intimate with one another in warlike or competitive circumstances. I've been pretty quiet about the fact that I'm a trans man usually, but holy shit, I need to tell you about the culture shock I'm going through because it is blindsiding me. There is a huge sense of social isolation that comes with being perceived as male because of how people are subconsciously treating me as a potential predator. All strangers, no matter their gender, keep their guard up around me. It's made me realize that there is no inherent camaraderie in male socialization as there is in female socialization. Unless, of course, it is in very specific environments. And the fact that I don't ambiently experience this mutual kinship in basic exchanges anymore is an insanely lonely feeling. You know how badly this would have fucked my mind up if I'd grown up with this? It's 4:30 a.m. and I am mourning the loss of a privilege I didn't even know I had. And let me scroll down. If you figure this out, can you share your insights? This is fundamental as to why I'm in the closet. Absolutely. Because it is an extremely sticky issue. Frankly, this is something I would have never understood without living the experiences. It is now blatantly clear to me that most cis men probably experience chronic emotional malnutrition. They are deprived of social connection just enough for it to seriously fuck with their psyches, but not enough for them to realize that it's happening or what's causing it. It's like starving, but they don't know it because they've always been served 3 meals, except those meals have never been big enough. This deprivation comes from all sides of the aisle, by the way. In the case of women, when I'm out in public and interact with women, all of them come off as incredibly aloof, cold, and mirthless. I have never experienced this before, even though I know exactly what this composure is. The armor that keeps away creepy-ass men. As someone who used to wear it myself, I know this armor is 100% impersonal. Nobody likes wearing it, and I can say with absolute certainty women would dump the armor in favor of unconditional companionship with men if doing this didn't run the risk of actual assault. Trust me when I say that women aren't just being needlessly guarded. But I only have a complete understanding of this context because I've experienced female socialization. If I hadn't, I would have thought this coldness was a conspiracy against me, devised by roughly half the human population. Even now, with all that I know about navigating the world as a woman, I'm failing to convince my monkey brain that this armor isn't social rejection. And as far as male socialization, again, it seems taboo for a man to be platonically intimate with men for reasons I have yet to fully understand, but I think it boils down to A, the fact that society teaches boys that it is not okay to be soft with each other, and B, garden variety homophobia. Our media only shows men being intimate with one another when they're teamed up against a dire situation, and I'd bet real money this is a huge reason why men gravitate towards activities that simulate being teamed up against an opposing force. Men are not machines of war. Yes, testosterone absolutely gives you dumb bastard brain, but that just makes you want to skateboard a wagon down a hill or duct tape your friend to a wall, not kill someone. The human species looks so much colder from this side. I can see how men might convince themselves that their feelings of emotional desperation is a personal weakness, as opposed to a symptom that they're all experiencing from white imperialism, because this human connection is essential for our well-being as water. How sick, I want to destroy this garbage. Now, that's the end of that post. I disagree that this is a white imperialism problem. I think from what I've seen in the discourse, this seems to be a problem universal to patriarchy, not just white imperialism, and that other cultures will often recreate these same dynamics elsewhere. But considering that we all live in the West, we all live in America, we can specialize our criticisms and comments to the West here. One of the things that's come up in the discourse with this is also, the way that men's problems are often like dismissed or ignored or even mocked. Men are not seen to have like real emotional problems that are taken seriously. Often, if a man starts complaining about some issues, they're seen as whiny, and I've heard this one directly. No one wants to hear a grown-ass man whine. Even if you're talking about things that really affect you, you're told to just sort of toughen up and take it. And part of this problem also is that men are told not to talk about it because you're not supposed to whine. You're not supposed to complain. So men will avoid talking about issues that plague them, or issues that bother them, like the plague. They will avoid it. They will get incredibly uncomfortable when you start poking at it. But that's the male side of the aisle. To flip it over to the other side, women are also often encouraged to... are you all aware of the phenomenon where some women will encourage other women to like give their partner the cold shoulder if they're not doing something you like, or if they didn't like get you what you wanted, or just giving them shutting them out of emotional socialization, emotional intimacy, until they behave the way you want, to like train them like a dog. That, as it was pointed out in the discourse, is straight up emotional abuse. Depriving someone of social interaction that is kind of vital for them to continue, just so that you can browbeat them into doing exactly what you want instead of healthily communicating your wants and needs. That's pretty toxic. And there's more, but before I belabor the point too much, I'll turn it over to the rest of the panel to get your thoughts and your reactions. So yeah, go ahead.
It's also good to remember too that a lot of this starts at a very young age. Like I remember like being at a friend's house when I was like, I think in like the 2nd or 3rd grade, and like he got hurt pretty hard. We were riding dirt bikes, and like his mom was like, "Are you okay?" And that kind of is when he started crying. And his dad said, "If he keeps on crying, I'll give him something to cry about."
I was given that one as well.
Around here, especially being in like a rural town, people are literally told, "Don't cry, you're a man, be a man about it, man up," and all that type of rhetoric. But it's something that starts at an extremely young age, and I think should honestly be classified as child abuse, because like what would his dad done if he hadn't stopped crying? Like whooped his ass? I don't know. Luckily I didn't see that, but like I just think it's something that's like you said, it's not really a gendered issue. It's just kind of something that has been a system that the patriarchy has done.
Yeah.
And just continuous.
I think a lot of people who either are only familiar with pop feminism or in the case of a lot of transphobes, they don't really conceptualize the idea that the patriarchy hurts men as well as women. They are hurt in different ways, but men suffer under the patriarchy as well. In the case of a lot of TERFs that I have argued with, when trans people talk about how, hey, patriarchy hurts men as well, TERFs will like essentialize that to men. Like, the patriarchy's hurting men. Well, who made the patriarchy? Ha ha ha. Sucks to suck, doesn't it? And that's always come off as incredibly cruel and callous. We cannot solve systemic problems by playing team sports of essentializing systems to individual people. Instead, we need a mutual understanding between all genders. Be like, hey, this is an incredibly harmful system. Here's the way it hurts all of us, and we should unite to build a better world. And there's difficulties.
How crass are we allowed to be on?
You're allowed to be crass. It's YouTube. Anything goes.
I had something pop into my head, but I remember in my more skinny jean wearing emo scene days, like all the guys that were kind of like in my circle, the more like country or preppy girls would go, I'd never date y'all. I've already got one pussy. Who wants another one? And I'd be like, I don't know.
I think there's a lot
But
to
stuff like
here.
that get back.
I mean, those are probably, going to be more traditional girls with like that internalized misogyny, pretty much from the patriarchy that, that men have to be this masculine being. And I heard a really good comparison the other day. Patriarchy hurts both men and women, but similar to how punching someone in the face hurts your knuckles. And you're not going to complain to the person that you just punched in the face, well, my knuckles hurt. You're right, it does hurt you and it does cause damage, but there's more, not more pressing, but there's more damage elsewhere. So it's, I will always be the first person to say like the patriarchy hurts everybody, even though I share a lot of like what can be construed as anti-men rhetoric on my page. But I mean, that's really just to rile up the problematic ones because I like it. I like doing it.
Riling up the problematic ones is always fun. Can some of the cis men think of some of the ways that patriarchy, and patriarchal systems and behaviors have harmed you and people you've known in your life, or even spicier, how some women have reinforced some of those harmful standards that have hurt you?
Something that
I can't think of any of the more hurtful ones rather than. Oh, go ahead.
Something that I've seen cause a lot of the issues, and I don't know how much I've been affected. I always feel like I've lived somewhat of a charmed life. I'm not very wealthy or anything, but I've always had like just enough, and my parents did a really good job, and almost everyone I know, their parents didn't do a good job. And so I always feel like total shit being like, well, I grew up great. Like, I don't know how to address this always, because it just comes off as like douchebag-ish. Like, I hate to say like all this stuff, but like growing up, my parents didn't really gender me super hard. Like, I remember when I was in kindergarten, they had like a toy. I think they had like a sled, like to go down hills, but it was just filled with toys. Like, that was their giant container. That was like the size of a whole tabletop. And whenever it was like the hour for play, when we do like card games or different types of games, teachers would like supervise kind of, and then whoever won got to go take a toy. I got really good at stealing in kindergarten because of this, because I really liked all of the jewelry. My parents never fucking figured out where I got all this stuff from. I would just be like, I want it, and I would come home with like pirate levels of jewelry every single day because of this. But my whole thing was like, since I was in such a religious like situation, I was always like, oh, I'm like the kings in the Bible. Like, I have all the rings, because it's like that's what like the biblical leaders and people look up to had like rings and stuff. And so like I didn't really see it as a gender thing, more of like a power thing because of like capitalism, how that's worked for so long. But at the same time, I never really felt so much of the effects until I moved out to the suburbs, which I know you hated.
Yeah.
That
First of
was
all,
like a
evil.
huge culture shock moving out there for sure. And I ran into a lot of things that PK was saying. Like I was in that kind of like music scene, kind of like friend groups and stuff. And that would even happen up in Illinois where I was, where people kind of be derogatory towards people. I've always been really tall and big, and people haven't been terribly mean to me. I've been kind of like a loner, but like people have always, I feel like maybe just been too physically intimidated to say too much stuff to my face. So I never like caught a lot of it, but a lot of my friends would like catch stuff, and I was always kind of too timid to do much when I was younger. And so I would hear that frequently online. I'd see like my friends' pictures get like rated by people and just get like trashed for having skinny jeans or just like whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that caused self-harm. Like when you're in a developmental stage like high school or something like that, having people like attack you and kind of try to like, I don't even know how else to put it, but just like
What? No! Eh? Come back! Why did it decide to
Did they
crash
have
then?
more traditional gender roles, or did they kind of abandon that whole, like
My
for
parents-
themselves?
my parents stuck to traditional gender roles
Okay.
for the most part, but it was like,
Oh, okay,
It's-
that was weird.
that's fine.
String
A
solo?
lot of it was always explained to me in a way where like things happen not out of because that's how they were supposed to happen, but just because of like it worked that way. My mom was able to stay home when my brother was born as like a stay-at-home mom, and so I grew up in an environment where it was kind of like, I mean, it was in a really crappy, cheap apartment, and we ate food that was like one day after expired, like all the time. But I didn't feel like that was weird as a kid because like the community I was in, everyone ate food that was like donations, and everyone donated to everyone, and so. If
Yeah, I
you'll
mean,
get
I'll,
back
I'll,
on here.
if it doesn't smell
But-
bad, I'll
Exactly. And so, but at the same time, I was living in an environment where I got to hang out with my mom all the time, and my dad would go to work and stuff. But one of the things I guess I was trying to lead to earlier. So yeah, I guess like they did have gendered roles that were regular, but it was just because my dad had his degrees and had certifications for. That's a crazy thing. He has a PhD and 2 master's degrees, and he's an author now. But for most of the last few years, I mean, still he runs like a giant network as an IT guy for a architecture firm that's like a skyscraper in Evanston, Illinois. And so it's funny to get like 2 doctoral degrees and like all that college and not use degrees. I mean, he's writing lots of books because of his knowledge and stuff, but at the same time, for the last 25 years, that's not how he's made his living. And so it's just nuts that you can get that much education in our country and not be able to use it in a way. In like in the near future, even like I can't imagine getting my boot camp certifications and stuff that I'm working on right now, and then not getting a game dev job for the next 25 years of my life. Like that would be insane. The nice thing with coding is there's a lot of freaking jobs in coding, and I'm going to get a job at some point somewhere. But kind of bouncing back to when I was, man, I keep getting like let off.
Sorry,
My
we're
brain,
focusing
like,
on patriarchy, sexism,
Yeah.
and how that affects men.
One of the main driving forces behind it, I feel, that enforces misogyny across the world is actually like religion, and not just Christianity, but a lot of parts of religions enforce patriarchy because it's been a nonsensical way of running things for so long that people often have to appeal to like spirituality. And in my experience in the church in America, something I would see them do was make it acceptable to be vulnerable and emotional in church, which could lead to people getting addicted, like emotionally, to go to this place that also tries to enforce that men have to do all these things. Like there's a whole part in the Bible where it talks about like men doing these things, women doing these other things, which is also nuts because people who follow like the rules of the Bible is like literally against the theology of Christ for the most part, because his whole things was like the rules don't really matter anymore, and that's kind of like those were rules for people who are dead now. Why are we following them, kind of a thing. And so that's just something that churches all around America constantly enforce gendered roles on people, saying like men have to be this in the household, women have to be this in the household. And for a very, very, very long time, lots and lots of churches have been patriarchally led and like enforced. So like women can't make it very far in the Catholic Church, and that's like the biggest Christian organization in the world. Like they can be nuts, but like it's rough to get past that, you know what I mean? And with that, it continues their hold on people. And so it's like an interesting thing that you were talking about, how games and competing allow people to feel emotional. I saw men crying for the only times in their life in church. And then that enforced that was like a place that they could go, and it kind of made like this thing where they could emotionally like have a catharsis there, and that becomes like addicting to be able to do that kind of a thing, and it makes it kind of one of those things that rails against science, where people could just get therapy. And so instead of that, people are going to church, and some churches have therapists there. There's a lot of Christian people who went into like psychology and stuff. And so there are people who are trained at some churches. I remember the like half of my friends growing up were adults who were psychologists in that communal church. Like I think there must have been 30 or 40 psychologists in that church with like doctors. Like it was such an it was like an unbelievably educated church. It was nuts. And so that was a funny thing. Like I just got a bunch of pictures from my mom. I don't know why I put them away, but there was like a picture for my second birthday, and there's like it was my birthday cake, my downstairs neighbor who was like family friend who was a kid, and then like 7 adults were like who I invited as like a 4-year-old or whatever to my birthday party. I like wanted all these people there that like weren't kids. That was just like who, because the church was like a weird thing where it wasn't like everyone was just all together. Like people were just people. It didn't matter how old you were, didn't matter what your gender was. Sexuality didn't really ever come up. I didn't really understand that Christians hated gay people until I moved out to the suburbs. Like it wasn't a thing that people were like. I know there's some churches like United Methodists who are very, very proactive about, or some of their churches, not all of them, but some other churches are very proactive and have like LGBTQ flags outside, and they perform weddings for anyone and stuff like that. And so it's like I know there are churches that are really proactive like that. And that church wasn't proactive, but it was just like a non-point. It was just like, why talk about it? Like it had nothing to do with salvation. So like why do we care about that in any way? Which I think is honestly, in today's world, we should be being active about it, and that's something that if you're going to be in a church, you should be active about like people not being discriminated against for their sexuality. But at the same time, like at least they weren't doing anything negative about it. So
can the panel talk about how in the post it talked about how men are like malnourished socially, partially starved of social interactions. My perspective on that is a little bit different because I'm neurodivergent. I don't know how many neurodivergent people we have on the panel, but I have autism and I have ADHD. So I grew up kind of used to people treating me at like an arm's distance, or being weird, and I could understand that like it was almost like me and other people were speaking 2 different dialects that just couldn't quite sync up no matter how hard I tried. And I almost even when I was talking with boys who I was supposed to be able to socialize with on tasks, I almost never socialized with girls all the way up until I was like 16, 17. But before that, the socialization was pretty gendered on my part. And even then, men are not like in my experience, men are not encouraged to like talk to each other all that much, all that often. So I would have friends, and then we would both like drop out of existence for weeks or months at a time, and then we'd happen to like show up at the same event, and we'd be like, "Yo, dude, how's it going?" Fist bump, and then like we'd go play a game, and that was the extent of like our friendship. Is, you know, if we showed up in the same physical spaces, we hung out, and we're, you know, we'll play the same games, but it's only been as of recent, and with this server, and a lot of work on my part, outside of the server, outside of politics and things like that, to build continuous relationships where people like check up on each other and talk, and continually socialize, rather than the a good explanation is like fasting. You know, like I would you know, meet with a friend and then stay with that friend as long as possible, consume, you know, gorge myself on social interactions, and then once I'd had my fill, I would go away, and then it would be a fast of socializations and social interactions until the next point where I could gorge myself on the next social interaction. And we see this a lot. No! Again, why? Discord! Am I back? Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. Discord crashed. Discord's telling me we're going over an hour. We gotta wrap this up quick. We see this with men who are not like taught how to be emotionally intimate with their guy friends. So if a girl or a woman shows any amount of like social friendliness or intimacy, they're starved for attention, and so they zero in on that, and they just start going in, and they become extremely attached. Or in the slightly less toxic version of that, men will only consider that they're allowed to be socially or emotionally intimate with the one woman, their wife, and that's it. And therefore, that woman is then expected to be their wellspring of emotional needs entirely. You see this a lot with, like, you know, it's almost like, have you ever met a married incel? You know, the type of, oh, rah, rah, I hate women, you know, that's my wife, the old ball and chain. These are people who, like, have very...
in the military.
Very malformed ideas of how to have social interactions and emotional intimacy, that they only believe that it can come from one person. And obviously that overburdens and can overtax and overwhelm the woman, who is not prepared to be the sole source of emotional intimacy for a whole ass person, you know. And that can become taxing, and that can become a bitterness, you know. We also see this...
I think that's kind of one of the reasons... Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, like, around here, I think that's kind of why so many people are conservative, is because that's kind of how it's always been. Like, I know a guy, his dad owns a business. He's about probably 7 or 8 years older than me. He's never moved out of his house. And he had a girlfriend that bought them a trailer, bought like an acre and a half of land, and he's like, why would I ever leave? Like, I have no business where I live. I don't have to do anything. Like, I'm set. But if I move out with you, now I have to pay my own bills and all that. But I was also going to make a point about kind of how men act in certain situations, and I think you can look to hockey as a particularly unique lens, because when they have like videos of hockey players mic'd up, or you see them in like practice, they're all chummy and very like social. But then when you see them in like a post-media scrum or doing like a media event, they're very robotic, almost like they're not even human. They're just kind of like, yeah, that was a game tonight. We scored. And they're just like almost robotic, like they don't even exist.
Another way that men are socialized. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the like acceptance of like sexual assault towards men from women. I know I've experienced this more than once. Gabriel, you're a lot better looking than I am, so maybe you've had more instances of this. Women will just come up and they will touch your body in ways that would be openly considered sexual assault if the roles were reversed. You know, I've had people slap my ass or pinch my butt in the grocery store, and they didn't even know me. And it's incredibly uncomfortable for someone to touch your body in the ways that you don't appreciate. Or when I was younger, people would come up and just start petting my hair because I have red hair. And that was always incredibly creepy as a small child. I hated that. And as I've talked to other men, it seems like, you know, from my perspective, it seems like sexual assault towards men is like not even considered a real thing. What's coming to my mind is like that porn actress like Riley Reid got actually canceled because she went on a whole Twitter thread about where she basically admitted that she raped a guy. But she excused it because, well, he got a boner, therefore he wanted it. And it's like, it's incredibly disgusting to see that the assault that men face or their mental health struggles, a lot of that is just sort of like dismissed. You know, it's not considered real. You know, it's just like how we talked about earlier about how how some women are encouraged to be like, oh, if your man's not doing XYZ what you want, withhold sex from him until the patriarchy is fixed. And like, that's an incredibly gross idea of it assumes that women don't enjoy sex, they just endure it, and it's some sort of transactional thing to achieve some aims. And two, it assumes that men only exclusively think about sex, and it's not just like a healthy part of a relationship, and that men can be controlled via what's between their legs, and it's a dehumanizing concept that is dealt with quite a bit, and is quite frustrating. I've always, especially as a trans woman who deals with TERFs on a regular basis, when someone reduces you to just what's between your legs, they're not considering you as like fully human. You're just parts with a brain attached.
Yeah, I think the whole lack of emotional expression in men kind of goes back to, like, I mean, I can pretty much tie everything back to the patriarchy at this point.
That is what the discussion's about.
It goes back to that emotional expression has been kind of deemed a more feminine trait, and that's like a woman's area, and so anything feminine is pretty much not okay for someone who's masculine to exhibit. And that's why I thought it was really funny how there's this push for men's mental health, which obviously is a great thing, but then it's also a lot of the same guys that were supporting people like Andrew Tate that actively were like, you're a fucking bitch if you do this, if you complain. Like, it didn't really make sense. And that video, one video where I'm like, I was talking about women's impact on men's mental health, or not mental health, on suppressing men's emotions. Then the way I look at it, and I definitely could have worded it better, but the way I look at it is, who do you think would be suppressing their emotions? Is it going to be the progressive women that are wanting to take down these gender roles that men and women are expected to partake in, this focus on mental health? Or is it going to be the more traditional women that these guys typically go after, but that also uphold the gender roles and that think that the emotional expression is their responsibility and that men shouldn't be? So, if a lot of them were complaining about the very type of women that they want to be with, so it was kind of like wanting their cake and eating it too, and that's just kind of a response that I noticed in that video.
Yeah, it's sort of the great tragedy in sort of marketing of leftist ideas, is that feminism has been tied so strongly to like women only, or like, especially because we had this problem back in like the 60s with the political lesbians, a concept I despise. And a lot of those turned out to be like TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, people who took, hating men as a political position, and they weren't rooted out of the movement soon enough. And now we're dealing with the effects of that as trans people come up. They try and essentialize characteristics, or essentialize like systems like the patriarchy to essentialist characteristics like men, and they try and hold all men accountable, or any one man accountable for the entirety of the patriarchy, rather than seeing that as a harmful ideology that we all have to band together and fix. And feminism isn't just about rah women. It's about, hey, this system is harmful to us all, and it would be better if we dismantled it and built a more healthy, more inclusive, and more understanding system in its place.
I think it's, and it really kind of goes back to the word feminist, and that it's been so closely associated with the word woman, and that it isn't necessarily true. Men can absolutely be feminist, women feminine, women can be masculine. It really isn't a descriptor of one gender specifically, so I mean, I guess obviously women overwhelmingly represent femininity, and men overwhelmingly represent masculinity, but that again brings it back to those assigned gender roles from the patriarchy, and we're gender abolitionists. So
All right, do we have any final thoughts and closing statements from each of our guests? We'll go in reverse order than what we did last time. PK, do you want to give any closing statements and thoughts?
Yes. Always check if you're going somewhere that's a swimming area to make sure that it is safe to swim in. There's a 55-acre lake about a mile from my house that's not safe because of so many dead bodies they found. And you never know what's in there. It could be poop, it could be dead people, and register to vote and vote this November.
My man just slips that in all casual right at the end. Oh yeah, we can't use that lake. It's full of dead bodies. No worries. We're just going to breeze on past that.
You can still fish.
Oh, well, a good thing. Our fishing isn't interrupted, Fish on, fish on. Oh, never mind. That's just an eyeball. We can use it as bait. Aha!
Catch a sturgeon.
what, a three-eyed fish or something.
All right. Gabriel, you want to give us your final thoughts and closing statements?
I think it's something that people should consider more um, with what influences they're letting in their life, whether it is religion or like Andrew Tate, or I mean, which kind of a religion because it's kind of like a cult leader.
Yeah.
But anyone, as to what's disallowing you from having empathy towards others, I have had only success in my life from the times I've been empathetic towards others. Even if someone was to take advantage of me, I never felt bad looking back at those situations. So being empathetic towards others is honestly one of the most powerful things you can do, not just for others, but for yourself. And giving yourselves the opportunity to have things, whether that's like relationships with others, being like stuck behind like what the patriarchy has you told to do. It just harms you in all your relationships that you'll ever have. And non-related topic, you should Google the name of your city and then add Google the name of your city and then add on to that. What was it? Man, I just had this a second ago. Sorry, community fridges. I have a tab up for this. Google the name of your city and community fridges. See if you have one. If you have one, go be active with it and putting food in it. And if you don't, consider starting a community fridge yourself. There are free freezers and fridge type things that show up on like Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. And there are ways of like crowdfunding for them also. There's a lot of different instances of people making community fridges throughout all of the United States, and there's a ton of resources online about it. So it's something I definitely say is one of the easiest and most achievable things you can do to help your community with food shortages that happen all over because of capitalism.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Astro.
Not much, and pretty much unrelated to everything, but boycott Amazon and Starbucks until they let their workers unionize. Short and sweet.
Brilliant. All right. And I'll give my closing thoughts. Speaking from my experience as a trans woman online, remember that when you're talking about systems like the patriarchy or imperialism or white supremacy, stuff like that, that these are not in their entirety consolidated into single individual people that you meet every day. Not every man is responsible for the entirety of the patriarchy. Not every woman is responsible for the entirety of the patriarchy. Not every white person is responsible for white supremacy. What they are is harmful systems that harm everyone under them and benefit a few, usually rich, people. And the way that we solve them is not by going, I hate all men. I'm a political lesbian now, and I'm gonna deny all the men's sex. No. We solve them with empathy, with camaraderie, with working together, and pooling our resources to create piece by piece a better world. And of course, don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. We can teach a bunch of men to, be more empathetic and be more understanding and be more feminist. But that's not going to stop women from smartly moving to the other side of the street when a man starts walking behind them, because it only takes a few predators to poison the entire well. But it is through collective effort that we filter and we all cultivate the garden. We pull out the weeds, in my experience, if you're a guy in a group, I'm an ex-man myself, you can be the one voice that pulls back the group from like harassing a woman or from going too far. It only takes just one voice in a group, and you can start to pull them and steer them in the right direction. So I encourage you to do that. Talk to your friends, have those conversations, reach out, and understand that it is through empathy and understanding that we move people to our positions, not through cruelty and hate. And with that, we will close out for the night. Thank you everyone in the audience for listening to us. It's been wonderful. I think we'll be moving the show to the Wednesdays for release, but we'll film it on Mondays because timing and schedules and all the things like that. You will be able to find all of our beautiful guests down in the description below. Subscribe to the Discord where you can meet all of us and more creators as we all hang out in the same Discord server and pool our communities and interact with the audience. And support us all on Patreon. We have various streams, merch, and things like that you can enjoy. So find your favorite person and throw some love their way. And with that, I wish you all a very good evening and good night.